Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Ealing Road podcast, where on today's show, we're going to be going over the victory against Bournemouth on Saturday. Obviously, a bit more happy this week compared to the podcast that we did last week. Looking forward to talking about it. Craig, how you doing?
Yeah, very good, thanks. Very good. Happy after this game for sure.
Definitely. Dan, Europe, what are we saying?
It was all right, wasn't it? I can't get too carried away now, but yeah, it was all right at the weekend, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was good. It was good. Just before we get going, remember to drop a comment down below. Subscribe to the YouTube and Spotify channels, and also give us a follow on our socials. It's at the Ealing Road on Twitter and at Ealing Road Pod on Instagram. Just before we get into Tweet of the Week, just to say 6 years to the day since the passing of Robert Rowan. So from everyone at the podcast, myself, Dan, Craig, Miranda and Callum, Susie Rowan will be in our memories, and I'm sure he'll be very, very happy with all of the B Team Academy graduates that have gone into the first team in recent years. So yeah, big shout out to Robert Rowan on 6 years since his passing. Craig, Tweet of the Week, I put a message out at the start, just before I started producing the episode, looking for some head loss, but obviously we win, so there's no head loss this week. So I thought you guys threw me a good few stats that we can talk about. Most prolific duos in the Premier League this season. Brian Mbeumo and Yohan Wissa are top of that list. 8 goals for Brian Mbeumo, 7 goals for Yohan Wissa. We're only beating Palmer and Jackson, beating Salah and Diaz. Brentford at home this season versus the rest of the top 5 leagues. Joint most goals in Europe. The joint highest XG per shot. Second most aerials won. Least fouls, points per game. We are beating Real Madrid, Barcelona. We're level with Real Madrid, Barcelona in terms of goals at home this season. Dan, we are entertainers. Good for the neutral, but not for us.
Yeah, definitely. I think that basically tells us where the problems lie, because we're really, really good going forwards with Mbeumo and Wissa. I mean, only Haaland, I think, has scored more than Brian. Wissa's only a goal behind Brian, despite missing 3 or 4 games, which is insane numbers, really, if you think about it. So with them two, we're always going to score goals, I think, and a few of the other players, are starting to contribute. We're good at set pieces still. The issues lie going the other way, where we are still pretty much struggling to defend and just play out from the back, and it leads to a lot of high turnovers. So you do, I guess, wonder about the sustainability moving forwards. To keep having to score 3 or 4 to win, you're probably not going to do that every week. So we might have to tighten up a little bit, and maybe that is why we're slightly better at home as well, because maybe it's a bit easier to take the initiative and be that attacking team at home than it is away. But stuff to work on, but at the same time, there's a lot to be positive about as well, and we're in a decent position in the league.
Craig, is there a world where I think we've all kind of consigned to the fact that Brian Mbeumo is probably going to be off in this summer? Obviously, there was some interest in Yohan Wissa over the last summer gone. I think Wolves there was reports of a bid coming in for Yohan Wissa. Is there a world where we could see both of them depart at some point in the future? In the near future, I should say.
In the near future, no, but at some point in the future, yes. I see. Well, we kind of all thought that Wissa was going to go, didn't we, in the summer? But that was dependent on Ivan Toney going or staying. So, I mean, eventually every player is going to move on. We all know that they're not going to be here forever. There's no loyalty in football anymore, is there? From players. It's a difficult one now, actually, when I really put my mind to it, to call whether or not Brian leaves before Wissa does. But there was a lot of talk of Brian getting a bid from Newcastle or something in January, but I don't see him going before the season ends. Not unless they offer silly money. Silly money. But yeah, I think we see Brian go before we see Wissa go.
Do you, in terms of the seasons that they're both having, I'm sure Yohan Wissa's minutes per goal must be right up there with the best in the league, considering he spent quite a bit of time out injured and he kind of had to come back into things. But he's 7 in 8 appearances, because he missed quite a few games with that injury when he got injured at Man City. So, I mean, the thing is, I know that Brian will go on to bigger things, and there's no doubt that he could do it. But I was just thinking, because we watch him week in, week out, Dan, and we see sometimes he can be off it. And we've always said that one of Brian's biggest problems is consistency, because when he's on it, he is unplayable at times. Would you say that Yohan Wissa is more consistent, or has been more consistent, than Brian Mbeumo this season?
It's a weird one because I'm not sure I can actually see Wissa at like a real top team, whereas I feel like I can see Brian at a real top team. And I'm trying to put my finger on why. Maybe it's because Wissa doesn't. He's not like a commanding striker. He very much needs players to create the chances for him. And then when he's through on goal, he will finish, and he'll finish most of the time. That's his strength. I think Brian maybe can more create chances for himself and create something out of nothing when he's on it. And he's got maybe that bit more like X factor that you need for like a real top player. I think obviously Wissa's a bit older as well, so that doesn't help him. So I'm not sure I can really see Wissa at a level much higher than Brentford, although if he keeps going, he would perhaps deserve a shot. I think possibly more consistent, but I think that's just because we're creating the chances for him and he's a centre forward and the chances are more likely going to fall to him if we play a through ball for the centre forward. I think with Brian, most of the chances he creates, a lot of the actions he creates, I think, come from his own skill or his own beating a man and or curling it into the far corner. So I think that's the difference between the two. But yeah, it's an interesting one with Wissa. I just can't see him going to a bigger club, which makes me feel like it's in our hands whether we choose to let him go to a Wolves, because I doubt he'd push that move. Like perhaps he would if it was a top team.
Because it's like kind of a Wolves is kind of a sideways step, you'd argue. I mean, this season they look like they could be in a relegation fight. I know they got a big win on the weekend, but it would be a sideways step. But it could be a good strategy for any club to just buy them both, Craig. you get them both, 100 million. You get a really good combination, and give us 100 million.
You get a proper combination. They're becoming modern day Barclays from the two of them together, aren't they?
For sure. Let's move on to Bournemouth, chaps. Craig, I'll come to you first, mate. Initial thoughts after full time.
Initial thoughts after full time, absolutely buzzing. I was very, very happy with the result. Obviously, every fan would be, but I think it was so important to bounce back after the diabolical showing we put in on Monday night. It was so important for us to get that win because it was I don't know about you guys, but I felt like it was starting to turn. The crowd was starting to turn, especially when, I know we're going to talk about it, Sepp puts them basically 1-0 up with that really short back pass. And I could feel there was a turn in the crowd coming, unfortunately. But we reacted really well. We got ourselves back into the game, which was important for us. But yeah, overall, I'm very happy. But I think the performance was more important than the result in this instance. Just glad we got both.
Yeah, I think I didn't say it on the last pod, but I messaged someone, a shout out Matt if you're listening. I messaged him to say it could get toxic if we get thumped against Bournemouth at home after the performance on Monday night. But we didn't really speak about that on the podcast. But I don't know why there was so much bad will from the fans after Monday night, and everyone was so fed up. I can imagine if after that Sepp goal went in, if there was another one in quick succession, it would have got a little bit toxic at the Gtech. But Dan, thoughts on the lineup, because obviously there was a bit of confusion. The WhatsApp chats must have been going off for everyone trying to figure out what the fuck formation we were playing. Interesting to see Mads dropped after Thomas Frank's comments in midweek. But yeah, how did you see it? Because I've been checking lineups and KLP was at left back and Sepp at right back, and then Damsgaard on the wing. But some of the areas Damsgaard was popping up in was more central. So how did you see it, Dan? Give us a summary.
Yeah, I think we all thought it would be at left back, but that wasn't the case. Yeah. And I thought Jensen would be a bit deeper alongside Norgaard to help us keep the ball a bit better. I think in reality, KLP was at left back, but when we had the ball, Sepp kind of tucked in a little bit to make it a back three, and KLP was given more license to go forward when we had the ball, which I think is why you saw Damsgaard tucking in the forward line, because KLP had the license to come forward that side. But I think at least when we didn't have the ball and you saw our shape a bit more, I think it was the KLP left back and Damsgaard more on the left-hand side, but definitely trying to drift inwards, which I think is where he's better anyway. So it was a good change, I think. I'm not surprised Roslev was missed out. I think it's very clear that Thomas Frank was just trying to defend him, but he obviously saw something like what we saw, because the fact that a left winger is playing at left back and a centre back is playing at right back just to force him out of the team almost is quite telling. And I do suspect maybe if we do get that full-back cover that we've been looking for, Maz Roslev might be one of those to go out the door.
In the first, you mentioned the shape and sort of the confusion that kind of came after the lineups were released or when they got dropped on Twitter. And then the first 20 minutes, everyone's kind of talking about Thomas Frank's got this terribly wrong because there's a chance for Semenyo, there's a chance for Senesi at the back stick, Craig. And that was from a well-worked set piece as well. We're going to get onto Bournemouth's second goal because I thought it was a really, really nicely worked set piece. But in that first 20, Craig, was it what the atmosphere, I can imagine, was just getting a little... After every chance, you're just like, fucking hell, we need to sort this out. And then it looked like it'd be Fulham all over again once Sepp gives it away. But just it kind of took us that first 20 minutes to kind of get into the game, which seems weird because we were actually the ones to be starting fast at home in recent weeks.
Well, saying that, we haven't... Since we scored the 4 goals in a row in the games where we scored inside the first 2 minutes, we haven't pushed teams in the way that we did in those 4 games, I think, which is strange. That Senesi chance was huge. And if that goes in, that completely changes it because no one followed him from that ball in. Absolutely no one followed him. The Semenyo chance you mentioned, that's a good save from Flecken. But I also thought that Keane did really, really well to keep Semenyo kind of under control for the majority of the game. So that's a winger keeping there was that tweet, wasn't there, a little while ago, ordering them. So that's our winger, pocketing their winger for the majority of the game. But it was on the edge of turning, and those first 20 minutes, including their goal, there was starting to be a bit of a sour turn. There was a few boos in the West Stand, a little bit of a sour turn. But as soon as we get that first goal, which kind of came against the run of play, it completely changed the ties of the game. And we were probably unfortunate to not be winning going in at half time. But then again, I could be saying we were fortunate not to be 2 or 3-1 down at half time as well. So it was on a knife edge. It was on a nice edge.
And then obviously we get the equaliser. Craig, you mentioned it there, long throws. It was kind of a set piece kind of battle. I know that Bournemouth has scored a couple from set pieces, and their set piece coach has been getting a lot of credence with their goal against Arsenal. But we kind of mentioned, took us 20 minutes to kind of get into the game, Dan, and then we get back into it, and then straight after half time we're pegged back. But then again, Damsgaard gets his first Premier League goal of the season. I think let's walk through the goals because I feel like there's kind of a lot of players that had really good games that I want to kind of speak about as opposed to the actual flow of the game, because I thought once Damsgaard got the equaliser and then we got the third, we actually did well to kind of see the game out. But Damsgaard, Dan, let's come to you on Damsgaard, because again, I think Match of the Day did a little stat pack on him. He's like top in terms of interceptions, tackles, chances created, goals, assists, sorry, not goals. He's just been phenomenal this season. And then after Dan, Craig, I want you to pick up because I know you love Damsgaard so much.
Yeah, and he's in my fantasy draft team, so got me some points at the weekend alongside Wissa. Actually, so it's a very good weekend just in that Brentford game for me. But yeah, I mean that was the only thing missing, wasn't it? I thought Kepa clearly should have done better with the goal. He was beaten at his near post. I think Bournemouth fans are quite disappointed with that because he was only brought back in for this game after Travers done pretty well. But yeah, it's the only thing missing. But you find nearly everything good that we have done this season going forward often comes through him in some respect at some stage. And you could just see the confidence flowing from him now, and you could just see the difference that makes. I mean, he's a shadow, like he was a shadow of this player a year ago, 2 years ago, and he's now one of the first names on the team sheet, to the extent where Jensen comes back from injury and we don't think that he's going to get anywhere near him in the team. And it's great. We needed something to freshen up the midfield because Norgaard, Janelt, Jensen after 4 or 5 years was starting to be a bit, you feel like you're a bit more in there after so long, and he's proving to be that player. And I think he's also keeping Carvalho probably out the team at the moment as well, because if Carvalho was to play, I think he'd probably be in that number 10 area where Damsgaard usually is.
Craig?
I wish it was the winner. That's the only thing I can say is I wish his goal was the winner, because it was such a muted celebration. But I found that even when he did score against, was it Sheffield United, the goal that he got disallowed last season?
I think so, yeah.
when he scored that goal, which was a really good goal, by the way, he didn't really celebrate that either. He just gave it a little bit of a fist bump and then just kind of went on with it. He's obviously hasn't scored for so long that he's forgotten what he's supposed to do after the ball hits the back of the net. I'm absolutely thrilled for him. Absolutely thrilled for him. And I hope that that's not the only bloody goal that he scores now. So let's see if he kicks on a little bit and scores a couple more, because I mean, we can all agree, we've all seen him this season. He's been in the places that he needs to be. He's had the chances and he just hasn't been able to put the ball in the back of the net. And I said it about Kevin Schade. He needs to score a rubbish goal like that. I mean, he did against Sheffield Wednesday, but he missed the initial chance, which you could see when afterwards he didn't want to celebrate because he'd missed the initial one anyway. But Schade needs to score a rubbish goal like that one as well. But yeah, absolutely over the moon. Absolutely over the moon for Mikkel Damsgaard.
Yeah, no, he definitely deserves it. And I think even Match of the Day, they did a piece, I think, because obviously Thomas Frank was working with BBC over the summer. And Thomas Frank supposedly said to them, you need to watch out for Mikkel Damsgaard because there's so much more to come from him. And we're finally seeing it, which is so nice to see. It gives us more options in midfield because Jensen coming back. But Jensen actually I thought was really good on Saturday as well. I feel like that midfield battle, I think we won especially in the second half, and especially because we were talking about it before in terms of their attacking players and their midfield areas is probably where they're strongest. So it was key for us to actually kind of get that right. And then obviously we have to talk about our third goal, because I want to say goal of the season in terms of a team goal, because the dummy from Vita, the 1-2, and then the placement of the pass from Vita as well. And I want to give Vitaly Janelt some flowers here, Dan, because we've kind of spoken about how we don't need both Norgaard and Vitaly Janelt in the same midfield. And if one's going to go, then it probably would be Vitaly, because he's more like a utility player. And I feel like sometimes going forward, he maybe lacks that bit of killer instinct, or lacks the pass, or lacks a bit of composure in the final third. Having said that, he must listen to the pod, because ever since we've said that, he's been head and shoulders above Norgaard. I think that was the second week Norgaard's kind of been off the pace. And I tweeted out after the game, I said, he's never like this for too long. And I hope that comes to fruition, because I can't remember a sustained period of time when Norgaard has been bad week in, week out for several weeks. But it is 2 games on the spin when Norgaard has looked, I don't know what it is, Dan. I feel like there was a few moments, especially in the first half, where he's got a lot of time on the ball and he just misplaces a pass for no reason. But I don't know. I'm not seeing, when he came back into the team, when we said that we missed him at the start of the season when he got injured, I feel like we saw his impact quite immediately. But since then, the levels have dropped off. And for Vitaly, since Monday night, he was probably our best player. And again, on Saturday, I thought he was our best player again. So he must listen to the pod, Dan. He must.
Yeah, I mean, with Norgaard, it's always difficult to drop Norgaard because he's a captain. That's one reason that, Thomas Frank will probably be reluctant to drop him. I think maybe, I don't know whether he's maybe struggling a little bit with us playing out a bit more, us being under a lot of pressure, because teams are pressing us a lot at the moment because they know that our weakness sometimes is getting caught doing that. And he's not necessarily the most creative Norgaard, but normally you'd trust him to keep the ball, keep it moving, even if it's not an extravagant pass. But definitely he produced the only real bit of quality going forward on Monday night. Even before that, he's got composure in certain situations. He doesn't just shoot in every circumstance. He teed up Norgaard a few games ago, I think, to score. Mm-hmm. He's got, that move today, at the weekend, when he dummied the pass on Pinnock, received it back from KLP, and it was a perfectly weighted ball into Wissa. That's something you see from a more creative midfielder, and he does have that quality. We only signed him for 500k. He's got to be value for money, one of the best players we've ever signed. And he does have that quality. We've maybe not given him enough credit for that. We've always kind of said he's always a 6 out of 10. He runs around a lot. He works hard, but you've seen it. He has that quality. That ball through to Wissa is not something you'd necessarily always expect from him. The dummy in the build up as well, the strike on Monday night. So he's definitely adding things to his game and he's improving. And, he's a very experienced Premier League player now. He's someone we always rely on and he's always there, which can't be said for a lot of our players who get injured every few weeks. So he's someone who's so useful to have. Just he's always available, and I think the players last season were keen to. I think didn't he win the players' vote for player of the season last season? I think he did.
So.
Obviously, the players all recognise how important he is to the team as well.
He's got to be due a Germany call up soon, hasn't he? Vitaly Janelt, with the performance that he's put in this season, he's got to be due a Germany call up.
Sharda's in there. Yeah, that's very true. So I thought Sharda was good when he came on there on Saturday. To be fair, he made an impact. I thought a little bit, but I mean, we'll talk about his place going forward. But do you want to talk about the pen, Craig? Iraola said they should have had a pen. I've seen it again. I think it was really soft, but obviously we're quite biased.
Yeah, I do want to say, I think if it's the other way around, we're screaming for a penalty. We've had ones like that. We've had ones like that not given for us, and ones like that given for us as well. So, excuse me, sorry. It's a difficult one. Pinnock makes no attempt to tackle him or do anything whatsoever. They're just running, and it looks like Evan Nielsen sort of, as he's running, flicks his foot back as you do, as you're going to take your stride, and clips Pinnock's shin. So he almost fouls himself accidentally. So it would have been incredibly harsh to give it. But on the other hand, if I was a Bournemouth fan, I'd be screaming for it as a penalty.
Referee didn't give it, so I suppose that shouldn't be overturned. That's not one that should
maybe he hates Iraola. Maybe he thinks he's a Spanish twat or something like that.
You take your lessons from David Coote, yeah.
There was obviously the last 5 minutes was extremely painful to watch, and you're kind of watching it thinking, oh God, here we go again. We're not going to be able to hold on to this, because I think if it was a 3-3 draw and we go away with a point, again, definitely not as toxic if we'd have lost, but to be 3-2 ahead for as long as we were, and then, you know, when they hit the bar, Jesus Christ, heart in mouths. But Dan, to kind of see us come out the other end, and I think that there's a big reaction from Thomas Frank at the end. I'd not seen him celebrate a win like that in a long time. It was kind of, you know, you're kind of waiting for the inevitable to happen, and it just didn't. Were you both thinking the same thing? Because I was watching it thinking that the ball is going to go in the net soon.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was so soon after the Fulham game. It had to have been in the players' minds as well. Those last couple of minutes, you can see we lost the composure a little bit in the last couple of minutes, and we just started clearing it again and defending the box. We left Mbeumo on the bench this time though. Didn't bring him on for Brian, so Thomas Frank was back to making his attacking changes. I think he obviously has learned from not making the attacking changes on Monday night. And aside from when it hit the bar, I thought we were pretty comfortable, and that was in the literally last minute or so. So of course the big relief, there was quite a big cheer in the stadium, bigger than normal as well, when the final whistle went. And I think we can safely say Bournemouth are probably the best team we've beaten this season. They're a good side. So it's definitely a really good win that we managed to see out.
I was thinking about this the other day. Obviously, Ipswich got a big result against Spurs, and Palace beat them a couple of weeks before then as well. Do you guys feel like that kind of middle section of the Premier League this season, because we were talking about it just before we started recording, it's like 4 points separates 3rd to 10th, or like a 3 point separates 3rd to 10th. It is, apart from those elite three in Arsenal, Liverpool and City, I do think maybe the rest are a bit more closely together this season, Craig. I don't know. I'd probably need to do some digging into the data and who's beat who this season. But do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I think as the season goes on, we'll obviously see the top three pulling away and whatnot. But I do think that there is going to be more of a battle before sort of 7th to 10th. 10th, 11th to 15th, and then I think we'll see the bottom five being pretty similar to what the bottom five actually is now towards the end of the season. Touch wood. But there's so much more competitiveness this season it feels anyway. And Dan, you said it as well. I don't know if you said it before we started. It just feels a lot more interesting after these many games we've had already to only be 4 points between, what is it, 3rd and 13th. Chelsea. Is it Chelsea who are 3rd now? Chelsea.
Yeah, I know we're 3 points off 3rd and we are 11th.
And that's crazy. That's crazy. That means if we can say ifs and buts, but if we hadn't fumbled, crumbled, buckled, collapsed in the way in which we did on Monday, we'd be 11 on points in third.
Yeah.
So this season is completely open still. It's completely open, and it could really, really go in any direction. I think that we'll see a real different Premier League this year, and I hope that Forest fall away.
Yeah, I was literally I took the words out of my mouth, Craig. I was so happy that they lost against Newcastle at the weekend. I was so happy they lost against. But you're right. It's like you got Newcastle, Forest, Fulham, Villa, Brighton, all of these teams that you wouldn't traditionally see towards the top end of the table, and they all are there. So we hope that Fulham and Forest drop out of that and we get in. But I think it is going to be a bit more competitive this season. I think we're kind of seeing that already. Not in the running order, just before we get onto some players that I want to give praise. What do we think about the whole David Coote thing, by the way? Because, I mean, it was massive news yesterday. It's still number one trending on Twitter today.
I just think I just think that we're as a sport, we're okay giving grief and abuse to officials, and coaches and managers are okay giving grief and abuse to officials, even when they're not around in their post-match interviews. But a referee does it and he gets suspended. A referee does it and he gets suspended.
What do you reckon, Dan?
Oh, he's an idiot for doing it, isn't he? You see the video after as well, where he's like, nobody can see this, all right? Nobody can see this. He obviously had something to drink or something stronger.
Or something else, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a silly thing to do, but I agree that they do get abused a lot. I'm not normally one to really go for referees at games. I do think they're trying their best. I don't actually think he has a secret agenda against Liverpool. I think it's ridiculous. It's just going to fuel all the fans who try and push that narrative, and I don't think that's the case.
No.
I think what he was actually complaining about in the video is that Klopp was trying to suggest that he wasn't being fair, and he was. So it's all a bit silly, really, but you can see why they've got to suspend him and they've got to investigate, because it just gives fans and clubs something to rely on every time that if he's a referee now, they're going to be like, well, he said this about Liverpool.
He'll never referee a Liverpool game again. He'll never.
No, he won't. You can't come back from that. I mean, putting yourself in that situation is so stupid. But I do think like the reaction, and it's like Klopp's not even in the Prem anymore, first of all, and as if Klopp has never said anything bad about David Coote. He's just not stupid enough to say it on camera when you're fucking half cut and have had a few beers. So you're so right. Like the fact that he says in the second video, this can't go anywhere, and it's come out like 4 years later. Why are you putting yourself in that situation? You're a Premier League referee and you're saying stuff like that on camera in the hope that it's never going to come out. Like, oh Christ, it's just funny. Anyway, slight tangent. Let's go back to the game. Some players that I want to focus on. Nathan Collins, Craig. I think there is a shout for him to be our best performing player this season, which sounds weird because we've not kept a clean sheet and we've conceded a lot of goals.
Yeah.
But I think he's made more blocks than any other player in the Premier League. Some of the interceptions that he's made, the way that he reads the game, how calm he is on the ball at times. There was actually an argument in our comment section last week between two people that listen to the podcast, and they were talking about Ethan Pinnock and how he needs to be dropped, or it might have been a couple of weeks ago, to be fair, but they were just saying how, well, one of them was saying how Nathan Collins is like streets ahead of where Ethan Pinnock is right now. And I don't think it's hard to kind of disagree, Craig. I mean, Collins has been obviously really shaky the last season. You know, we had that argument about how he struggles to find consistency. He's either really bad or really good, no in between. But I feel like this season especially, he's just been really good in most games. So Nathan Collins, again on Saturday, Craig, absolutely superb, I thought.
Yeah, we've spoken about Nathan Collins and Ethan Pinnock a lot already this season, mostly due to the amount of goals that we are conceding. But before we talk about Nathan Collins, I kind of want to talk about the second goal that we conceded. And I put a message in the chat, and I don't know if anyone else is going to agree with me or disagree with me or what. But I thought there was a foul on Ethan Pinnock in the build-up to the second goal, because as soon as the penalty happens, I don't know which player it is, he immediately runs to Ethan Pinnock and just holds him. And it stopped him from getting across to get a block in. So anyone that hasn't seen it, watch the highlights. And then the second goal, you'll see the player
from the corner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The set piece from the corner. And it's Collins that gets across as well, and Pinnock that tries to get across. But Pinnock is very clearly held and stopped from moving. And that's something that caught my... I mean, I'm not going to take anything away from the goal. Brilliantly well-worked goal. Absolutely brilliantly well-worked goal. Straight off of the training ground. And the reaction of their players shows that it was straight off the training ground, because they ran straight to the bench, didn't they? Ran straight to the bench. But yeah, that's something that I spotted. I thought it was a foul. But anyway, Nathan Collins. I think he's been brilliant this season. Like you said, we spoke about him so much last season about he's either really good or he's really bad. There is no in between. But for a team that's conceded so many goals and for a defender to be a standout player, it just kind of shows that maybe he's not particularly the problem. He was playing 2 positions on Monday, which didn't really help because he was covering a player of which got dropped because they were pony on the weekend. That game, but he's always there at the moment. I don't know if you guys notice it as well. Is whenever there's anything defensively good happening for us or bad happening for us as well, he's always involved. He's always there trying to do something. Like the Wolves goal where he gives the ball away, but then he's making so many blocks and clearances and things like that as well. He's probably in the running to be our player of the season at the moment. Unfortunately for him, Mikkel Damsgaard's having the season of his life. Other players, Wissa and Mbeumo, are playing brilliantly as well. But we need to start turning his good performances into clean sheets because he's not being rewarded for the stuff that he's doing at the moment.
Dan, Nathan Collins, player of the season so far?
I think it is between the 4 that Craig just said. And I think we've got to give credit now to our Premier League recruitment, which is being criticised. It has been criticised in the past. If you're looking at our 4 best players this season, 3 of them have been purchased in the Premier League era. And of course, even in the Championship, Brian wasn't the player he is now when we first signed him. Everyone takes time to develop, and that developing time in the Premier League is 10 times harder because you're at such a high level. And it may take a bit longer, therefore. So we may this time next year. I'm hoping we'll be talking about Sharda in the same way. It takes time to get to the level, and if you've got injuries and stuff, it will take even longer. But the fact that those 4 are our best players this season, and 3 of them are signed in the Premier League era, I think we've got to give the club some credit for that recruitment in the Premier League era, particularly a goal scorer in Wissa, because they're very hard to find. But yeah, Collins is up there. I'd probably go for Damsgaard maybe at the moment, but he's definitely up there. I think he's much more comfortable on the ball than Pinnock as well, which I think maybe sets him above Pinnock, because I think Pinnock remains a good defender. But where Pinnock's come from, you're probably not too surprised with his non-league roots and his Barnsley route. He probably hasn't been asked to play much football on the ground over the years, but you can see Collins is more of that modern centre-back, comfortable on the ball, and he's still so young for a centre-back as well, and he's still got levels to go, I'm sure.
You mentioned, the Premier League signings. KLP is another one who I thought put in an absolute shift on Saturday. And you mentioned the kind of subtleties in terms of him being left back, but out in possession when he was given the license to bomb on a bit. Again, it's one that we feel sorry for. I don't know if I feel sorry for him anymore, Craig, because he's been playing in these positions and he always puts a shift in. He must be enjoying having this run in the team, because there was, when he signed, he wasn't always the first name on the team sheet, but now he's keeping Sharda out of position in left wing when he's not a left back, and when he's at left back, he's keeping Vita in midfield. So he's doing everything that Thomas Frank is asking of him. And again, another big performance on Saturday, Craig, from KLP.
He's our best left back at the moment.
Not hard.
It's not hard though, because we haven't got one. I thought that he actually did really, really well, and I thought his attacking impetus as well was really good for this game. I felt like he was pushing us up the pitch in the same way that we see Rico Henry doing it when he is in the team. But that's obviously because he's not a defender. He's ideal position is further up the pitch, and his want with the ball is to get it forwards. And I felt as soon as he got the ball, the team was only going in one direction, which is what we need from fullbacks, because that's what we're missing a lot from Rico Henry and Aaron Hickey. So if he wants to play there, by all means, let him play there. If he wants to, let him. I can't imagine that he wants to. I can't imagine that he wants to, but let him play there. Because he was brilliant. He kept Semenyo quiet for the majority of that game. He had like one chance in the first half, and that's the only one I can really remember where Flecken makes the save. And that's their, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Talisman. That's the word I'm looking for. Yeah. So yeah, and Nathan Collins after the game posted on Instagram, didn't he, saying my left back with a picture of Keane Potter as well. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. And yeah, I'm glad that he's getting this run in the team. Just probably another one of those players that needs a goal.
Yeah, I think as well, Wissa, his contribution on Saturday, besides the 2 goals, I feel like his hold-up play on Saturday was very, very good, and he was just a constant nuisance to their centre-halves the whole day. There was a moment in the second half when he was chasing down a ball, and it was just him up top, and he gets there before, wins the header, holds the ball up, and I think he ends up getting a foul or bringing someone else into play. But that's the kind of hold-up play that we miss with someone like Ivan Toney, because he doesn't need to make a nuisance of himself, because he's such a target man and he can win fouls and win your aerials. But when you don't have the height and the physical stature that Ivan Toney has, you have to be a bit more clever in a different way. And I feel like Wissa did that on Saturday really, really well. And it kind of, you know, Wissa's good form. You were speaking about Thiago coming back soon. There's rumours that he could be back at the end of the month. You know, we won't talk about that because it probably won't happen. But when Thiago comes back in, Dan, I think someone posed the question, you know, what happens to our front line? Got KLP playing really well. Got Sharda as well. We've got Wissa and Mbeumo. I think, you know, we've spent a lot of money on Thiago, so it's not like he's not going to play or not going to start. It's a case of maybe how do we accommodate him and keep all of our best players in the team?
I don't think there's a rough to start him. I much prefer Wissa down the middle. And Wissa was stuck on the left for so long when we had Ivan Toney, and we're now seeing what he can do down the middle. He's getting a goal a game at the moment, so you can't really just take him out and bring Thiago in. I think they're different kinds of strikers. And I think depending on the game and depending on even the state of each individual game, some games will call for Thiago. Thiago would be more, I would have thought, we haven't really seen him much, but I would hope and think he would be more of that Ivan Toney presence in terms of being a target man. If we need to go a bit longer, if we're under real pressure playing out from the back and it's not quite working, we can bring him on. Or if we're playing one of the best teams in the league, then maybe start him so we have that longer option. Obviously, it entirely depends what his link-up's like as well, and whether he's able to draw the foul in the same way as Toney. But I think that's the idea. And maybe you can play them together sometimes, but I would be a bit reluctant to take Keno's Potter off and play Wissa on the left. I think if they're playing together, they need to be close together. Mm-hmm. That could really work then, I think. Obviously, sometimes you play a back 5, but then who would you take out, even if you have the 2 up front? Because Brian probably should play Brian too. So it's a good dilemma to have, though, because it's not often we have all these players to choose from. So even the bench in a couple of weeks, even the bench will look much better. Just what Craig was saying with KLP as well. I think he did do really well as well, but I can see us being exposed still at some stage in the future if he has to continue playing left back for the next 2 months, because ultimately he is out of position. And I think there will be one game, and it could be as soon as the Everton game in a couple of weeks, where we maybe do highlight as a weak area. So it does still concern me that he's having to play there. And I assume he'll play there again in 2 weeks' time. But I do think we will stumble across a game where we think, yeah, that was a problem today.
Yeah, I think so as well. Like, you know, there's rumours that I don't even know the timescales. And the thing is, with their reasoning with Rico Henry not bringing him back, like, fair enough. Second time he's done his ACL, you know, take your time. You don't want it. You can't be too cautious in these situations. But just going from where they told us he was right at the start of the season to it now being the second international break. And I think Thomas Frank said he's not going to put a timescale on it. He's due to play behind closed doors friendly, I think, this week. Or is that Nunes and Thiago? It might not have been Rico Henry, but
yeah.
You know, it's just when you build so much on a player coming back, and then they say he's going to come back at this day, and then it's pushed and pushed and pushed, and now we might not even see him until the new year, and we've still got KLP at bloody left back. then there's no doubt he's going to get exposed at some point. But having said that, he did a really good job on Semenyo on Saturday. But it's really interesting to see, after this international break, whether we start to see Nunes or Thiago maybe even on the bench. Got so many options going forward. It's just not a lot going backwards. We need some in the weak areas of the.
Go and get Reguilon in January. Go and get him back on loan again in January.
Yeah, it's not a bad shout. It's really not a bad shout, but. We'll see what happens. It's going to be interesting. Concluding thoughts, guys. I mean, we're 11 games in now. We're not going to do like a full-on Everton preview because it's in a couple of weeks, but we're 11 games in, 5 wins, 5 losses, 1 draw. We said home form would be key this season, Craig.
Yeah.
I want to say, I didn't fact check this, but I think we've already matched the amount of home wins that we had last season. I'm pretty sure we only got 5 at home last season. So that's pretty good. How would you assess this first period of the season, Craig?
Besides the Fulham game, I would say it's almost exactly what we expected to see. Realistically, if I'm being totally honest with myself, at the start of the season, with Liverpool, City, Spurs, United as our 4 away games, I didn't expect to get any points. I'm being totally honest, and I'm sure a lot of Brentford fans will be the same. Maybe we might have snuck a result at United, and it was looking like we was going to until the second half as well. And I'm kind of in the mindset that this is exactly what I expected us to do. Have to focus on our home form to be able to get points on the table because we're not going to pick many points up away from home at the start of the season. Now, our next run of fixtures is probably the next 5 games is probably the more important to us than the last 5 games that we've had away games wise, because obviously we're going to Everton and then we go. I've already forgotten who we're bloody playing. Anyway, Everton away next weekend after the international break, is probably going to be the biggest sign of the team that we are away from home based on the opposition that we're playing because of where they are and what situation they're in. Dan, I know obviously we spoke about what you were saying after the Fulham game about where we are as a team, but they're not so much of a shit show as to what Everton is at the moment. I was trying to think of something a bit more PG, but I couldn't. A bit more of a shambles, there you go, as to what Everton are at the moment. So this is going to be the biggest tell. But I think we are almost exactly where I expected us to be. Maybe I would have hoped for a point or 2 more away from home. And I kind of hoped that we'd have won that West Ham game as well. And we'll be on 18 points. But football, innit? It's a funny old game. What I wanted to talk about before we kind of wrap up or move on to the next part is how I don't think Christian Norgaard is strong enough to be captain.
No, that's an awful shout. It's a terrible shout.
Who is though? None of them scream captain to me, to be honest.
So I've got a couple of players in mind that scream captain more to me than. No, I would never put a goalkeeper as captain, mate. I don't like goalkeepers as captains. Funnily enough, Vitaly Janelt and Nathan Collins are my 2 shouts for who I think should really be captain. Norgaard, it bugs me. It really bugs me. And I say it to my old man all the time when we're at the football and he stands next to me. Any situation on the football pitch, when we're playing against someone, as soon as something happens, you see their captain run straight towards the referee to try and kick up a stink or to try and get something going their way. You'll notice it when we play Everton now more because I'm bringing it up. As soon as anything happens, the first thing Christian Norgaard does is walks away. And the 2 players that you'll more than likely see going towards the referee is Vitaly Janelt and Nathan Collins. They're the 2 players that take control of any situation in the team. Norgaard, I love Christian Norgaard, by the way. Absolute Brentford legend. He'll go down in probably in like the Hall of Fame when we in years and years and years to come, like Pontus Janssens will. But he's not a strong enough character in the team to be captain. I'm really, really sorry. I know you won't like that take. However, a lot of people on Twitter already agree with me when I say that.
Yeah, but it's just reactionary after 2 poor games. Like we're not saying this about Norgaard. We're not saying this about Norgaard at the start of the season or before he gets injured when we're begging for him to get back into the team. We're not saying about it. We're not saying that about him last season when he was one of the only ones that was playing well in a team full of injuries. I just think people that were gunning for him. So I think someone called him like fucking shy at half time, and I was
No,
like,
that's wrong. That's wrong, mate. 18th of August. This is a tweet from me. 18th of August this year. I love Norgaard, but he's too weak as a captain. 18th of August. So I'm not just saying this now as a reactionary thing to two really poor performances. This is a thought that I've had since the start of the season.
I'm not. I'm just not convinced by the other options. Like we don't have a Pontus Jansson anymore. We don't have a captain of that caliber anymore.
No.
So I don't think I'd change it unless there was an obvious better candidate. And I'm not sure there is at the moment.
No, I don't think. I think there's a leadership. Isn't there not a leadership group as well? It's supposed to be like Vitaly, Christian Norgaard, Rico Henry, some of the older heads that have been at the club for a while.
Yeah.
But I don't think just because he doesn't run over to the referee and kick up a fuss when teams score against us, like, I'm not sure if that's what we should be judging a captain on. And just because Vitaly Janelt and Nathan Collins do that, then therefore they should be captains over Norgaard.
No.
I think he leads by example and he leads by the way that he plays in most weeks.
In most weeks, yes. This is not a reactionary thing. You guys are treating me like this is a reactionary thing. I promise you it's not. It's a thought I've had for a little while.
So reactionary. God.
I can't believe it. Sorry, guys. No, this is a thought that I've had for a little while based on how he reacts to things. And it bugs me. It does bug me. And it is something that's bugged me for a little while. But I get what you're saying. But this is not a new thought. This is not a new thought. I've thought about this for a little while.
Let us know in the comments. Is Craig right? Should Norgaard be stripped of the captaincy halfway through the season?
I didn't say he should be stripped as a captain. I didn't say that. I said I don't think he's strong enough to be captain. I didn't say he should be stripped of the captaincy. Putting words in my mouth, Mike. Unbelievable.
So you would let him carry on being captain?
I don't have a choice. It's not my say, is it?
Would you strip him of the captaincy?
Next season, I'm taking the captaincy away from him.
It'd be a good debate in the comments. I'm sure a lot of people, because there were a lot of tweets about Norgaard. I saw it at halftime and post match as well, because he wasn't up to the pace again for the second week in a row. But there were comments about Norgaard. There were comments about a lack of leaders in the team. But it would be a good debate for the comment section. Just Dan, just to finish, our next 5, we've got Everton away. Then we are Leicester at home, Villa away in midweek, Newcastle at home, Chelsea away, and then we've got the big quarterfinal up in Newcastle. Expected points tally for that. There's some winnable games in there. Obviously, the Villa away game in midweek is difficult. Newcastle at home would be difficult. Everton in a couple of weeks is always difficult. I think like Thomas Frank, in terms of a manager that consistently does a job on him, Sean Dyche is normally one of them. At Burnley or Everton. So that's going to be a tough one. But, we played well against Villa last season. Leicester at home seems like a winnable fixture. And then there's that big one against Chelsea on the Sunday night, which I think we're going for our 4th win in a row at the Bridge. It would be if we managed to pull off a result there. But
that is, though, by the way.
I know, 8 o'clock on a Sunday. Awful. But yeah, Dan, what are you next 5 games? How do you see them going?
Well, I think Leicester is the one you've got to be targeting to win.
Mm-hmm.
The others are more
Quite
difficult,
difficult.
I think. I don't expect us to lose them all, but I expect us to be competitive in each game and pick up points here and there. But I don't think they're foregone conclusions. I think even Chelsea, we've got a good record, but they're much better this season. Newcastle in recent weeks have improved again. Villa are always pretty good, but maybe the games are getting on top of them a little bit at the moment. So we'll see how they fare that day. And I'd want us to get something at Everton. I think we probably should be getting something at Everton. But like you said, Sean Dyche seems to have our number. But at some point, I think Thomas Frank's a clever man. And I think Sean Dyche's tactics, he'd find a way around them eventually, you would hope. So it will be an interesting one. I think they will try and keep it tight and try and make it a really tight 1-0, whereas we kind of thrive in chaos a little bit more. So it will depend on who gets their way and how we can swing the game. But maybe having an extra man in midfield like we did against Bournemouth just by having Damsgaard kind of on the left, but also kind of in the middle, and having Jensen, Norgaard and Janelt in there too. Maybe that can help us take control of more midfields, or at least keep the ball a bit better. So we'll see how that goes at Everton. I think they'll be tough to beat, but perhaps we can show our quality, and if we do, there's no reason why we can't get something there.
Yeah, for sure, Craig. I think as well, sort of when we played Sean Dyche's Everton, bar maybe the home game last year, because I know Ivan Toney was out, but when we played them, we have been playing a different way with Ivan Toney in the team. Maybe it might be the first time that we played them when we're trying to play a little bit more expansive with the ball on the ground a bit more. So it could be different. It could be different on Saturday. Quick preview of the Everton game before we finish, Craig, and maybe just throw forward to the next few games. We've got Leicester at home, Villa away, Newcastle at home, and then Chelsea away as the next 4 after that. They're all teams that we said that the top 3 are maybe that kind of elite that no one can get near, but all of those teams are kind of the Villas, the Newcastles, the Chelseas. They're all kind of in and around that kind of third to
battle for Europe.
Yeah, the battle for Europe.
I think that Everton is our best chance of the season to pick up any points away from home that we've had so far. And we need to. We really, really need to pick up some points away from home. Leicester at home, like you've said, it's probably the most winnable game. I never want to say it is guaranteed, but it's probably the most winnable game that we've got in this run. Newcastle, we always have entertaining games, as do we with Villa. So they're 2 games to look forward to. And we all have a trip to the bridge, don't we, anyway? So let's not leave our first away win of the season till Chelsea. Let's pick up some points before then, but it'll be funny either way.
I think that would be a good point to wrap up the podcast, chaps. The Ealing Road podcast will be back for an episode during the international break, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Remember to drop a comment down below in the comments section. Should Norgaard be the captain? Do we have any other captains? Craig will be interested to know. He'll be trawling through those comments to see if he gets anyone agreeing with him. Remember to subscribe to the YouTube and Spotify channels. Give us a follow on the socials at the Ealing Road on Twitter, at Ealing Road Pod on Instagram. Dan, Craig, it's been a pleasure as always, chaps.
Up the bees.
Up the bees. There we go.